Give us free. Give us free.
Your Honor, please instruct the defendant that he cannot disrupt these proceedings with such outbursts.
Give us free.
If we are to have any semblance of order in this court,
Give us free.
Peace, unity, and welcome my conscious and unconscious family and friends. This is the all-new Black Village Community Podcast, and I am truly your host of the show, Jaycee, a.k.a. AfroBlack, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut. Without any fear, as I use my mic as a spear to chucka you with liberated truth. I am your host and your native soldier in the struggle. My purpose and mission for this show is first to enlighten, inform, and engage. And I want to engage with all who claim to know the truth. All truth seekers and my native family, I welcome you. This show is dedicated to all our indigenous native ancestors and to all those who've carried the mantle of truth, and to every person with the ability to throw off the chains of comfortable habit and unwarranted assumption and move in a new, liberated direction that is guided by truth and observational evidence, no matter where that direction may lead you. My main objective and purpose here is freedom, mind, soul, and spirit. That being said, welcome to the Black Village Community Podcast, and much love from our great universal goddess and mother of all living here and above.
AC in the house.
And black straight duking it out, and I say to myself, don't they realize we're in the same boat and we got to survive? They got our backs against the wall. How could we get them back over there, y'all? 187 passed the test. They want the Mexicans out, so the niggas gon' be next. So while we killing up our race, they trying to figure out who can we put in their place. They selling us out cheap. You wanna see? Look in your local swap meet. Now what they gon' do? Put us back on the boat, listen, fools, it ain't no joke. We gon' continue the low ride. Come together as one for that black and brown pride.
Okay, I'm experiencing some technical microphone issues right now. Well, you know, I'm working on getting me a new microphone, but it's okay. Gotta make do with what you got. So this is Jaycee, a.k.a. AfroBlack. I am here with you this delicious Black Sunday here at the Black Village Community Podcast. Let me turn down my freedom music, you feel me, my theme song. But I am here with you. I am back. I am black. Here for another delicious Black Sunday. To drop nothing but the raw and uncut here on the Black Village Community Podcast. And so this is a continuation from last week's podcast topic, a part 3. You know, whenever you go into a part 3, things must be getting delicious. It must be getting juicy. And I'm going to tell you, it is. You know, it's almost like when you're eating something, the more you eat it, the better it tastes. Or, you know, the more you want it. How about that? It's the more better it tastes, that means it didn't start out all that good. But let me say this here. Today's podcast topic is the divide and breakdown with the black and brown unity, subtitled in a blacked out indigenous history. Again, the divide and breakdown with black and brown unity, part 3, subtitled a blacked out indigenous history. And so we continue in this subject matter. I got some information I want to share. I know last week we talked about, you know, I shared an audio cast with Dr. Clyde Winters. I got some more audio casts. I got some more articles I want to share. I got articles I didn't get a chance to share last week. And so, and my queen is here to verberate, hopefully, because when she does verberate, we have good and stimulates good discussion. Queen, are you here? And let me change my music before you even say something, so we have something better to verberate to. How about something like this here? Go ahead, Queen.
Hello, my beautiful people.
So, Queen, you know, I asked you and I asked the conscious community to bear with me with my mic over here. Look like I'm going to do some Jimmy rigging on this damn thing here. But my mic is kind of acting like it's the arm is acting strange. But, you know, I'm getting it together. My head just have to do the Superman thing here. But it's all gravy and potatoes. We are doing it. We are here. And so we've been talking about this subject matter. And my point of talking about Mexican history, just like the continuation of last week, making that connection that black and brown people are more connected than we really realize or even know. Isn't that true, Queen?
Absolutely.
And so, you know, you got people out there who don't care. You got people who do care. You got people who are totally ignorant to the history of what we share together as a people. You know, during Cinco de Mayo, you know, nowadays you go out to a Cinco de Mayo celebration, you will see black and brown out there celebrating Cinco de Mayo together. Some people are out there just for the festivities. Some people are out there literally because they know there's a history that most people don't know about that we share. And that history goes all the way to the indigenous people of Mexico. And so, you know, to give a little summary of, you know, what we were dealing with last week. And, you know, we were talking about, you know, most people don't know that the indigenous people of Mexico, before European colonization, before Spanish colonization, before the falling of the Aztec and the Mayan Empire, the people that lived there, the indigenous people that lived there in that region, ranged from light brown, brown, dark brown to the darkest brown of what you might consider black, what people call black today. You feel me? And so most don't know that. They think that, you know, they want us to believe and they want us to think that, well, you know, the reason why them people were dark like that is because, you know, Africans traveled over there and settled over there. Maybe that might be true. Maybe it's not. That's not the point. The point is that the culture, the heritage, the traditions and the customs that those people created right there in that region was indigenous to the people, indigenous to the locality, and founded on what they created as a culture and as a people. Is that not true, Queen?
Yeah, that's how I see it.
You know, and it's just dumbfounds me, and I think it really dumbs down a lot of people, but it dumbfounds me to read how they're constantly trying to make an African connection. I mean, we were talking before the show started, Queen, and go ahead and verberate a little bit on what you were talking about how they have made it long time ago. They established there's only 3 races on the earth.
I think expanded to like 4. So there's the Caucasian, Asian, Latin, and
American.
African.
Wait. I think it goes the Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
It goes the Asian, Black, African, which they call black, and then American, right?
No.
Well, go ahead and I believe that's what I read.
I said
but
Latin. American is not a race.
Latin is it falls right under the Caucasian.
Latin falls under
The European people are considered all one people. And
that's if you say European, because Caucasian and Latin America are not the same thing.
They have to pull that
or
up.
Spanish, or those are separate.
Well, I think we have to pull that up there.
Otherwise, they wouldn't say Caucasian or black of Hispanicus descent or Latinist descent.
Well, see, Hispanic and Latin descent is the same thing.
Yes, but not you're saying American.
But my point is that American is still tied to the term and the title and the concept American is tied to the indigenous people.
Yeah.
It's original. So when you say American, I know the modern terminology American covers everybody under citizenship and under the white man's laws of Constitution. But when you just base it on the original name, which was coined by the Spanish for the indigenous people of America, we are indigenous people of the original American people.
I'm not arguing that. You said the 4 races. That would be Caucasian, Asian.
Latin. I'm just basing it off of that professor of the 17th
African.
century. That professor of the 17th century by the name of Constantine S. Raffinquah. Yeah, and his book titled "The Primitive Negroes of America." He talks about in his book the categories that they had. And the categories that I saw in that book, and that's a 17th century book by a professor of history and scholarly and archaeology. He broke down and said it was Caucasian. Wait a minute. I see a brother in the conference room. Is it who I think it is joining me? Who might I owe this to, my brother? Is this brother Jaden?
I'm here.
Man, I'm glad you're here. Conscious community, I want to introduce my brother, friend, guest, acquaintance who I, just recently, met. We haven't met each other in person, but we met each other via the internet, and the brother lives in Mexico. This is the brother I was talking about last week. I wanted to get on the show. I didn't want to mention his name, but he's here today. I'm pretty sure he doesn't mind. You want to introduce yourself, my brother?
My name is Jaycee Forte, and I'm an expat that's been living in Mexico for the past 4 years.
Okay, you've been living in Mexico for the past 4 years. So being there that you've been there for 4 years, I would imagine that you've learned a lot that most who have not, who maybe visited, maybe just toured, or maybe not even been there at all, just depending on the media and history, you've learned a lot that many don't know.
A little bit. You can never know too much, but I'm really focused on the back end. Pretty much all the things to keep an eye out for, to keep yourself safe and whatnot. So that's what I really pay attention to. Well, I try to.
Well, it was really important for me to have you on the show. I really appreciate you joining us here on the Black Village Community Podcast. And let me also say, those out there listening, you can always chime in. It doesn't cost you a dime to chime in, just a bit of your conscious time. You can chime in, ask us any question, especially if it's concerning the topic in which we're talking about, which is Mexican history, the divide and breakdown with their black and brown, a blacked out indigenous history. So you can chime in at 857-232-0155. You can also chime in at 855-445-9340. And don't forget the conference key to get through the conference door, which is 947595. Brother Jaden, I'm glad you're here with us. Me and my wife, we've been talking about this. This is the 3rd week we're talking about this, and we are in the month of May. We know that Cinco de Mayo started on the 5th of May, and a lot of black people don't know that. Some black people do know. I know that Cinco de Mayo, number one, I know that has nothing to do with the Mexican Revolutionary War of Independence. Okay. Well, because, you know, the average individual, especially us out here in the States and here in California, a lot of us out here I grew up, I don't know where we got the thought from, whether it was the media or if it was just maybe a mix-up in history, think that Cinco de Mayo has something to do with Mexican independence, and that is far from it. Matter of fact, it was years. What Cinco de Mayo has to do with it is years later. It has everything to do with the French trying to colonize. The French attempted to colonize and Mexico. And what's important to me on talking about this subject matter, okay, is, as I said, the breakdown between black and brown. Most Latinos don't know. Some do, some don't. A lot of black Americans don't know that there is a large segment of people in the community of Mexico, in the cities of Mexico, and they are considered black Mexicans or Afro-Mexicans. And what does this have to do with history? Well, I've been reading from a book titled The Blacks Who Freed Mexico by Ted Vincent, and he talks about how, though the slaves of Mexico at the time during the 1810 to 1821, which led to the independence of the Revolutionary War, which led to the freedom and independence of Mexico, that segment of people who were enslaved were black Mexicans. And then you had those, the middle class or middle upper class, was the mestizos or mestizis, and then you had the elite who were basically controlling the government of Mexico. But what's important to me, for me to know, is that you had black Mexicans or Afro-Mexicans. And us here in America, black Americans, who are seeking our identity, and some think they know and some think they got, and some are still researching, you know, those of us like myself who knows my heritage is in North America, who knows my cultural identity is in North America, what could you add to the enlightenment of history to young people today about what's going on in Mexico and how it relates to history?
Well, first and foremost, a lot of people, they get the terms, they get the term Mexican confused. So just to put it out there, being born and raised in Mexico, you're considered Mexican or Mexicano. Now, even though there are descendants of Mexicans in the United States, they're still considered American, but they throw the prefix on it, so they're considered Mexican Americans. At the end of the day, they were born and raised in the United States of America. So a lot of people get those terms thrown around. So when people, I'll give you a perfect example. So when a lot of brothers say, oh man, I hate Mexicans because of these California Mexican people, how they treated me, or New York or whatnot. But it kind of makes all Mexicans on a global scale look bad. Mexicans that were born and raised in Mexico, even though they're completely different. So that's where I have to come in and kind of educate them a little bit that it's a culture difference. So being born in the United States is completely different from being born in Mexico. There's two different countries, with rules that apply growing up wise. So that's first thing first. So that's what I want to throw out there. So the people out here in Mexico are very different from the Mexicans that grew up in the United States, because again, growing up American, it comes with its own culture. Versus growing up in Mexico, you grew up with a specific set of rules and morals. So to add some enlightenment, pretty much just don't get those two terms confused or not, and actually go out and explore different countries. And not just Mexico. I'm speaking just in general. Go out to any different part of the world and travel outside of the U.S. to kind of get a different feel of a different culture. Because you'll never think outside the box unless you touch another country's soil or whatnot. I'll give you a perfect example with that as well. When I first moved to Mexico, I was very ignorant. I was one of those knuckleheads, I'm American, I got technology, I don't need to learn Spanish, I got Google Translate, this and that. And I'll just use that to communicate with the locals out here. That really didn't work quite too well on my advantage, so to speak. Maybe a few months, but it really didn't pay off though. So it's always good to learn the basics of any language. Is it of that culture or that country or whatnot? That'll be a big plus. So anything else you want to know exclusively or whatnot? But those are just my biggest tips I want to give. Anybody in general, if they plan on visiting Mexico or any country or whatnot.
Yeah, my next question I want to ask you. All right, I understand that there's a huge culture gap when it comes to Mexico and when it comes to America and when it comes to American Mexicans and when it comes to Mexicans from Mexico. I understand there's a huge culture gap. All right, but me myself, being the person that I am, that I do research. I'm like an investigator. I do my own research. I consider myself my own investigative historical private eye, might I say. Okay, and that means I'm an inquisitive type of individual. I analyze things. I do. My queen is here and she's on the line. Say hi, queen, please. Say hi, brother Jaden. I know he would love to know there's a female on the line. Go ahead, sis. Try it again. I'm sorry, queen.
Hello.
But I just had to. I want my queen thing. I want her to be able to ask a question too. But I'm saying this to prepare my statement for you. The fact that if I was in Mexico, okay, if I was living in Mexico, okay, because I live here in California and I do it, so I know I would do it there. I analyze and I research and I ask questions because I want to know. And it's not for the fact that just asking in ignorance. I want to know because I knowledge and information is power, and that's just what it's all about. That's what life is about, learning. And so you being down there for 4 years, I know now that the media and academia is paying attention that there is an Afro-Black Mexican population, and in my research I found out they right now the census says that of 2015 is 1.4 million Black Mexicans in Mexico. I personally believe that number is a lot larger. You got people who won't even apply for the census. You got some that will. So you got to take that into account. So I see a larger number. So my question to you is that the people in Mexico who have a culture which causes them to have a different lifestyle than us, meaning, and I would imagine that they're closer knit people. You feel me? They're not as open. They're not as open to people or inclusive to people who they might consider foreigners, who are not familiar with their lifestyle and their way of living. And so my question to you, do those people still have connections to their indigenous ancestors, and to have a lot of those ancestral indigenous traits survived? Because I'm hearing that academia are constantly trying to say that the people of Mexico, that the Black population of Mexico are African. Now, I raise this question because if they're African, there should be African traits. There should be African something that survived, that shows itself as African. Because when you look at Black people in America, okay, we've been told that we are African, connected to the people of Africa, but I don't see any African traits in Black Americans. Now if you was to ask me, I would tell you my grandmother told me and my great-grandmother told my grandmother that we are Cherokee and Choctaw. So my cultural traits is connected to the indigenous people of North America. So I'm asking you again, the question I'm asking you, what African traits do you see out there? What African traits you see out there in the people? And do the people still hold to their indigenous practices which keep their culture together? And if those is those
okay.
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. What you finish before I chime in on that.
Well, yeah, because I know it's kind of what I'm asking, because that might sound a little detailed and deep. I'm trying to get this because I want people to hear this and understand what I'm trying to say. But what I want to know is, what do you see out there? Do you see? Have you talked to people that tell you that they can tell you that? Oh yeah, we have African in us, and you know, I know we come from Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Ghana. My ancestors, and you know what? We still practice the Congo that comes from there, and that's where our traditions come from. Or do you see more of an indigenous Indian traditions that's being practiced amongst the black Mexicans in Mexico? What do you see?
So, I might get in depth on this. I might get kind of deep on this just because that's kind of my area. So, first thing first, a lot of people, historical-wise, a lot of people don't know that all of the enslaved Africans that were brought on boats to Mexico or southern Mexico came from Cuba. So they have a lot of Afro-Cuban ancestry through the African slave or through the slave trade with the Spaniards. So all of these Afro communities that you can go to, communities know that they have African ancestry in them. They never reject their ancestry when it comes to the African bloodline, nor they do not reject their Native American bloodline as well, or the indigenous Americans in that specific part of Mexico as all. And me, I don't want to single out that portion as well because make up those communities as well. But to answer your question about do they still have ties back to Africa and they practice their African traditions, the answer is yes. They actually hold yearly events that they still know and practice African dances that's connected back to Africa in all different type of historical events and traditions as well. So yes, they do embrace that. It kind of keeps them separated from the modern world, and that's why they really don't want to embrace themselves. And they're a lot more conservative because they want to keep that part of their culture with their African bloodline or African ancestry and customs and traditions, and their Native American, Indian, or indigenous rituals as well. So that's why they're very private, and they kind of live in a conservative lifestyle, more like a village type lifestyle. But yes, they do, or they are aware of what's going on in the modern world and all the news and things like that. But to go back to the African perspective, they are very aware, and I was surprised because us as being Americans, and let's just be honest, when we come out to a different country, considered a third world country in quotation marks, as we know of, we think, these people aren't educated. They live under a rock. They're not up to date with technology and this and that. So we have these expectations for third world people. But come to think of it, they're like, yeah, we're Afro-Mexicanas. That's what they call themselves. And then when I throw that term at them, Afro-Mestizo or Zombo, it's more of a caste system as well. And they're surprised that I don't know about that because that's part of their Mexican history, and they aren't they don't get mad when I use those terms because, for example, how in the United States, how if, for example, a white boy calls a black guy a nigga, we're highly offended. Why? Because our culture, we went through racism, and the United States was based on a race system. So out here in Mexico, it wasn't as bad brutally and on that timeline. So, for example, the term moreno, that means dark skin, and güero, which means white skin. They just use those terms as a way of describing a person. Like they call me all the time, oh yeah, moreno or negro, but it's just a way to describe a person. Rather than back in the States, hey, what's up, nigga? From a white boy or from a Mexican or from a Chinese, we get highly offended.
Well, yeah.
The race calls us the N-word.
Well, yeah, is
that not right? So to speak.
I totally understand. I totally understand that a lot of the culture and lifestyle in Mexico is not taught over here, so a lot of people are totally unaware of it.
Exactly.
So I understand that when if I went to Mexico, and somebody said, "Oh, you know, you're a negra Americana," you know, I wouldn't get offended. I know he's saying I'm a Black American. So, but let me say this though. I think my queen, I think she might have a question in reference to some of the things you were saying. Queen, you got a question for Brother Jayden?
No.
Well, I just want to make sure because I know because see when you were talking,
I'm just listening.
Well,
I flag you when I have something to say.
Well, I don't want to take over. I just don't want to take over because I get started, Brother Jayden, and I take over. You know,
I wanted to chime in a little bit more about the roots about the Afros out there too. Like I said, with me, the Afro people are very interesting. I mean, not only to learn about, but because for one, even though, we say we have a lot of, indigenous tribes, like Indian tribes in the United States, but out here in Mexico, their physical attributes look so different. They have unique physical attributes right there from a different tribe. So the reason why I bring this up, because just like when you, what you said, like back in my elementary school days, if you got like the good hair, the pretty hair, we always say, oh, well, we got a little bit of Cherokee INDIGENOUS, because that would describe, the in quotation marks, the good hair, the wavy hair, the curly hair, in our bloodline, like our great to the fourth power granddaddy, is Navajo or Cherokee. But these people are first generation, which you can see the physical attributes, not like from, your 10th generation grandma that had, Cherokee in it, but no, these are first generation Native American Indians. So you'll have to crossbreed of, the African, that's like darker than or heavily melanated, as a lot of people will fair to say, crossbreed with, a full indigenous Native American mother out here. So you can actually visibly see the physical features, and they actually speak their dialect or their native language. So, for example, out here in southern Mexico, a few of them are called Teco, which comes from Oaxaca, Amusco, and I forget the other one, but those are Native American spoken languages that are still spoken fluently out here. So going back to the U.S., if the dude's like, yeah, man, I got some Cherokee in me, okay, cool. So you actually speak or have a conversation in that native language. I was never taught that. So what part of Cherokee do you embrace culturally?
Let me say something.
I don't know. I just know that my great granddaddy got Cherokee in him.
No, let me say.
So it's like, okay, cool. So you claim to be good,
Brother Jayden, let me chime in on what you're saying right quick, because you're saying some juicy stuff right now, and I have to chime in on it. All right, I totally comprehend. All right, that what makes a person is their culture. What I'm not sure what you comprehend and what you know about Eurocentric. What? Listen to me. Check it out. Listen to me. I'm not sure what you know and how much you know, and if you know anything at all, what you know about the political side of white supremacy, and what you know about also the destruction of culture at large in indigenous cultures, as far as history, as far as the connection of the destruction of indigenous culture. Okay, now I understand that we here in America, and you used to live here in America, so you're an American, even though you've been living there for 4 years, but you still got some of your American self. Okay, we've been.
I love it, and I refuse to give it up.
Okay, but and that's a beautiful thing, and that's a beautiful thing. But check it out. Those of us who are seeking our culture, because if you don't know your culture, yes, that separates you. I was just sharing last week on the show that there's a huge difference between somebody who don't know their culture, who can't identify with culture because they don't know it, so you can't identify with something you don't know, and somebody who knows their culture. So people in Mexico, the black folks in Mexico who know their culture and keeps them tight knit. They look at somebody like me, I'm an outsider, because I don't. Not only am I alien to the and foreign to their culture, not only am I foreign to their culture, but I'm foreign to my own culture because my ancestors had their culture taken from them during chattel slavery. Now, I know, and I've got the history right here sitting in my computer in front of me about the history of slavery in Mexico and how the forms of the caste system that was in there and how they were treated. But those people still held on to their culture. The type of chattel slavery that happened here in North America literally stripped and literally wiped the hard drives of the minds of the people. So there was not very much there to pass down. You know, it was a danger if a slave master found out that a slave mother was telling her child what tribe they came from. If they were, you know, whether if they were Ojibwa or if they were excuse me? Oh, I thought I heard something. Whether if they were from the tribe of the Ojibwa tribe, or if they were from the Comanche tribe, or the Yamasee, or the Yuchi, whatever. If the master found out, the master in some cases, and in a lot of cases, not only would the woman would get beat nearly to death, if not killed, he would possibly kill the child as well. Well, it was important to the slave master that his slaves did not know who they were, that they were who he told them who they were. And that was strictly really practiced more here in North America more than anywhere else, even though there were levels of it, and levels of it still taught in other places where slavery was practiced, even the islands of the West Indies and all those other islands where slavery were practiced as well. So my point of telling you this is this. I tell you that I know that I'm Cherokee and Choctaw. But if you say, well, Jaycee, can you speak Cherokee and Choctaw? And I told you no. Well, to you, you don't know nothing about your culture, Jaycee. You know nothing about your culture, because language connected to culture is much more deeper than just knowing something about your culture and not being able to speak it. I know you know that by living out there. Is that not true? Hello?
That's on a whole nother. No, I hear you. That's on a whole nother level. But I'll wait for you to finish, and then I'll chime in. Okay.
But is so far as what I just said, is that true though? If a person being able to
for the most part,
yeah, being able to speak your language gives you a deeper connection with your culture, versus a person who can't speak the language, but only knows a little bit about their culture through oral tradition. You feel me? Or history. You feel me? And so my point of saying this is that doesn't take away from the fact that because my ancestors lost their cultural identity due to chattel slavery, and I depend on the oral traditions of my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my aunties who tell me who I am. And then somebody like, maybe you or somebody else said, well, Jaycee, how do you know who you are? And the system tells me, oh, I'm African American. That's what the system does. The school system, the history channel, the media, the library tells me I'm African American, but yet there's no African traits in my family. You feel me? And when I say traits, I'm not talking about features. I'm talking about traditions, oral traditions, practices of any sort, let alone remembering anybody. You feel me? No African traits. And the average African American and the average so-called African American family in the U.S., there is no trace of African. And I'm going to tell you something else, brother. If you go check out www.slavevoyages.org, they've already did the updated research on how many Africans were brought to North America. And there was not even 500,000. Less than 500,000 were brought to North America. But I want you to know, there were over 20 million indigenous Native Indians or Native Americans enslaved prior to Africans being brought here. So knowing this just on the statistical scale of numbers, I ask you, who absorbed who? That was my statement ending with a question.
Oh, okay. Repeat the last question.
The last statement. My last statement was not necessarily a question, more or less of a statement with a question. If you want to add something to it, this is my statement. They've did an updated study and research of how many Africans were brought to North America. You can go check it out yourself on www.slavevoyages.org. 4 universities did this study, and they've already found out that no more than 305,325 Africans between 1626 to the last shipment of Africans that were brought here in 1787 only comes to 305,325 from 1626 to the last shipment of Africans in 1787. Now, there were over 20 million indigenous native tribes that were enslaved in North America. Over 20 million, starting from the first Spanish settlement of 1530 by Hernando de Soto, all the way to when the English came in and took over in 1586 to 1587 and took over Spanish colonies, and those colonies were nothing but plantations. Over 20 million indigenous people, over 500 indigenous nations, Confederate nations. So my question is this: who got absorbed? If you got less than 500, who got? My point is, what people got absorbed? When I say absorbed, is this? When I mean absorbed, if you got 20 million people and you got less than a half a million people, somebody's culture is going to get absorbed. Somebody's culture is going to get absorbed. That's like taking one person and you got 100 people and you got one person that's Mexican, 100 Africans, and they come together with that Mexican. Well, that Mexican is going to get absorbed by the majority of the people who have the majority of their culture that's populating that locality. You get my point? So, if you got 325,300 Africans that were brought here from 1626 to 1787, but you've already had over 20 million indigenous people enslaved before Africans were brought here, because enslavement started here over 200 years before Africans were even brought here as slaves. I ask you, who was absorbed by who? I say the Indians absorbed that.
The local Native Americans, because the majority ruled.
Thank you. It was more of them enslaved, and when the Africans came here to North America, they came to plantations that were already running generations and generations and generations before Africans were ever brought here as slaves. So those Africans came to plantations already populated by indigenous people, making indigo, making corn, making sugar, making tobacco, and so forth for Europeans. So that explains why, in my opinion, in my conscious and educated opinion, that explains why the majority of Black Americans don't have any connection with Africans, due to the fact there were so few Africans who came and got absorbed by the native population, as well as the fact of chattel slavery on top of that, compounding the situation. There you go. Now I want to hear what you got to say.
Well, first things first, I might be completely ignorant in a lot of different subjects or not, but I like clarification and simplicity. So my question to you is that, can you give me your raw definition of culture so I can just make sure we're on the same page when I'm referencing the term, or when I'm speaking of in terms of culture? So what is your raw definition of culture?
My raw definition of culture would be
how would you define the term culture?
Okay,
then I'll speak on that.
Okay, yeah. Well, let me give you the first definition, because you said raw. So when you say raw, that means you want the original.
Mm-hmm.
That means you want the original.
I want your version. Okay, your personal version of culture. Your personal definition of culture.
Okay, see, my personal definition has evolved due to my research and studying. You got to realize, at one time I was ignorant. I was ignorant too, and due to my research and study.
I understand. Yeah. I completely understand. I just want a direct amount.
Okay, so my personal
your raw definition of culture.
My personal definition of culture. Okay, my personal definition of culture is someone who is connected to their original ancestral ancestors who pass on principles and traditions that is rendered from your original root of your people, which is and in most cases is designated to a locality. I hope that helped. I hope that helped you.
Let me speak on that. So, my definition of culture, just out of the box, is okay, a culture is something that can be shared within a group of people or a community of people. Let's say, for example, they can share the same language, they can share the same foods, they can share a lot of similarities as far as dance styles and a lot of different styles, the way they move and things like that. So the reason why I ask you this is because when you're referring to, okay, we have a lot of Cherokee Indian, in our bloodline, but of culture, does anybody know about besides saying, well, I know my great granddad is Cherokee, but I don't speak the native language. I don't know any dance styles. I don't know any cultures or indigenous foods. So that's what I mean about culture. So coming back to Mexico, the Afro-Mexicans out here, they have and they know how to dance to the original African dance styles. They know a lot of African dialects from Africa, so it's fair to say, logically, that they're still connected in a lot of ways, not all, but a lot of ways back to Africa. Now, going along to the United States, how many of us African Americans, since we're so connected to Africa, how many of us have even been to Africa, or how many of us speak any of the native dialects back in Africa, or even know a few names of the foods that are locally in Africa? So let me expand on shit. So, for example, me, I'm a personal example. I consider myself an African American. Now, the prefix African, I'm referring to my genetic code, my genetic bloodline. So I have kinky hair, I'm dark skinned, and I stand 6'1". So I can say that my African genetic or my genetic makeup is back in Africa. But the suffix, which is my culture, American, I grew up in the United States. That's what I was adapted to, and that's what I was taught. Which, if it's, dance styles and, the way we speak, in California, just like you, and just things like that. Those are more environmental and cultural things. So, just like you're from California too. Now, is your wife? Where's your wife from?
Well, I'm glad you took a pause, because I'm going to introduce my wife to comment on when she was listening to you. And I had some comments, but I'm gonna let her comment, because she hasn't said.
I'm not finished. I just want to intervene, so I can make my point.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Where is she from? So I can make a comparison.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But I'm going ahead right now. I'm gonna let you. Anything you said, I want you directed to her, because I'm pretty sure she has some comments, because we were just eyeballing each other as you were talking. And I definitely,
okay.
I'm
ready. I'm perfect. I'm ready.
Okay, well, I want you to know I love what you were saying. I love what you were saying. But I want you to know that you're not, and it's fine. You're comfortable where you at. But if you're the type of person like me and my wife, and you want to get deep, then that means you want to know the deeper truth of things. And so, if you have something else to say, go.
I'm just very logical. I'm logical, and I'm simple, and I'm basic.
Okay, but see, sometimes being simple, being basic, and being logical is okay when it's time to be that. But when it comes to looking for deeper truths, or like the movie The Matrix, if you want to see how deep the rabbit hole go. If you just want to stay where you at and you want to go to sleep and wake up where you at, that's fine. But you want to see how deep the rabbit hole go. I'm the type of person, I want to see how deep the rabbit hole go. I understand that I'm African American, at least from the standpoint of what the system and what the country wants to label me. But to go and find my roots, that's a total different story when you go find and discover your roots. Queen, go ahead, please.
All right.
Okay, so
to finish with your original comment, yeah, I'm also predominantly Californian, but I've been raised mostly along the West Coast in Texas and Nevada. So.
Perfect. Okay, so let me intervene on that. Okay, so in Texas, I don't know a lot about the South or whatnot, but I know that you guys are called country girls. You guys like to eat, chitlins and fried chicken and all of those different types of Southern foods. Is that true, or is that not true?
Well, as far as that goes, I don't really know because I am basically an American mutt. My mother's side of her family, on her mother's side, is Norwegian. And as far as my grandfather, he is a mix of American and European mutt.
Okay.
So I was pretty much raised from teenagehood by my grandparents and a little of everywhere else. So culturally, I had a very diverse background, but Southern foods was, as far as I knew, that was basically fried chicken, greens, and watermelon and salad. So.
Okay, so that brings up my point that I'm going to make. So when your husband, we're referring back to what your husband said about, our ancestors passing down, different cultural things. So people that grew up in the South, let's just mark it back 100 years ago. So the food that our ancestors ate in the southern part of, the United States, like you said, watermelon, fried chicken, a lot of greasy food pretty much. So they passed that down on to deeper generations and newer generations. So that's how far I like to pretty much personally take it, because that's what I've seen, and that is a fact. People like watermelon. I love watermelon. I'm from California. And in California as well, my great-grandma loved watermelon. She loved chicken and all the traditional California-grown food. Mm-hmm. Family loves those type of foods. Now, that's something culturally, so that's what I share. I can't say, I love this type of food from Africa. I've never had it. I've never ate it. And as far as I know, my ancestors never had that type of food, so I can't speak on that because I'm speaking on facts that make sense.
All right, so we're basing the cultural basically on what we know as what was passed down to us heritagely from our parents and grandparents and so on. And when it comes to
and further on,
for the genetic part of what we found here in the U.S. is what they have shown people, and then what they have not told them on how to read those genetic baselines. As far as doing like DNA testing and finding out where most of your DNA comes from, they say that most of us have an African descent. But that's going to them saying that pretty much everybody then does. The basis of the Native Americans here was over 500 nations, and the first contact of the Native Americans they came across with happened to resemble what they called Africans. There are articles and letters written back to the kings from these early explorers that they had seen dark-skinned, woolly-haired, broad-nosed, thick-lipped natives here who resembled Ethiopians. They found those with straight hair, straight black hair, dark-skinned, and those were the first ones they came across. The first Native Americans were so dark-skinned that they compared them to Africans. They were also the first ones that they enslaved. Though they came across lighter-skinned Native Americans, they took them on a different level, like a caste system. So, but then they would. So the majority of those enslaved happened to be the Black Native Americans, and over periods of years, they wiped that heritage from them. And when they brought in Africans, started calling them all African. They would ship out prisoners of war out of their Native American villages and their tribes, send them off, and called them Africans and brought them back. So that's why there's so much lacking in African culture, because when they break it down to those who are actually from Africa, was such a small number to those who were broken from their tribal homes and replaced on the islands or to Mexico or even to South America, and some were even shipped off into Europe and to Africa. So that makes it difficult. So when you do the DNA tests, which we found a lot of information on them being frauds on those when it comes to saying people who are from Africa, most of your bloodlines from Africa, they're only testing a small strain, picking and choosing which strain they want to, because of comparisons from different DNA companies will have you compared to different regions, depending on which strain they choose to test. They show the newer strain in a larger amount and the oldest strain in the smallest amount. So genetically, the older the strain is, the smaller it's going to show.
And the older your strain is, the smaller strand, which is the older strand, is your original root ancestor.
So on that baseline, that's a whole other story of where it's trying to find out where people came from when it comes to Northern America and all the natives here. But that's why oral tradition was shut down, so they couldn't pass that on. So those who still have it are blessed to have it, and it's a benefit, because a lot of the oral tradition was basically, they tried to tell them no, it was ruled out, you can't have this. They've had the inventor of the the census and
let's say this, the oral tradition was so badly shut down here in North America that you had indigenous native tribes that existed that America was saying on paperwork didn't exist. Prime example, the Yamasee. For many years in the U.S., the Yamasee are one of the oldest tribes here in North America. And they're one of the tribes that people like Hernando de Soto, Giovanni Verrazzano, explorers, bumped into when exploring North America. But you know what? When the U.S. finally became a united country and became a United States of America, they put on paperwork, because they said these people never existed, that the Yamasee tribe don't exist. There is no black Indians. Black Indians don't exist. That, only the Mongoloid, white-looking Indians are the true natives of North America. This is what white supremacy and politics have done to our people here in North America, and disconnected black Americans from their native tribes. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Can I chime in for a second, if you don't mind?
No, go ahead.
Well, everything that I said was just based on a cultural level. Genetics is completely different. That's more on an ethnic level. That's a completely different. I'll fair to speak on that. But the reason why I want to chime in is because I'm on a environmental level, because I did study science, back in high school and not. And depending on your generations of family and different climate conditions, your body or your genetics to different environmental effects and climate conditions. For a perfect example, in Europe, the Neanderthal, they're considered, they have much lighter skin, or they have less melanin because of the climate conditions, and that's why Africans with darker skin complexion, they can withstand the ultraviolet rays from the sun or UV radiation, because they're heavily pigmented with melanin. And again, that's based on the climate conditions. Back in Europe, it's very cold, and the people with lighter skin, it doesn't really affect them. But me, I hate the cold weather.
Well, brother.
Yeah, that is
I want you to know that's a theory.
Sure.
That's a theory. That's it. Everything you just said is based on a theory and not a fact. I want you to know that as far as going back as far as during the ancient period or even the Dark Ages, it's going far backer than the Dark Ages. Let's go back to the BC period. They've discovered black people in Europe. Also, when you talk about black and brown, here in North America, I'm looking at a document right now that was written in 1836 by Professor Konstantin Raffenstick. I think that's his name. My wife probably can pronounce his last name better than me. I'm reading this book. I got a book right here. The book is titled The American Nations, written back in 1836. Check out what he says that they discovered here in North America when the first colonizers came here, the first Europeans came to North America, going far back as when the first ones came here in 1519 when the Spanish came. He says there were formerly in America, as now, tribes of all complexions, as elsewhere, yellowish, olive, coppery, tawny, reddened, brown, incarnate white, and even blackened or negroid-like, tall and dwarfish men from 8 to 4 feet in size, called giants and pygmies, men with various frames, skulls, features of all sorts found in the Eastern Hemisphere. The Americans had long before Columbus, large cities built of. So I don't want to go into the stone cities, but when he just describes the indigenous people, he said they came in all complexions. This is before Columbus. This is before Cortez, before De Soto, before any of the Spanish explorers or any of the European explorers ever came to North America. He said when he first came here, the first people they saw yellowish copper. They had yellowish people, olive people, coppery colored people, tawny, reddish, brown, incarnate, white, blackened, and even negroid-like. So there you go. That's written from a history book I just read to you.
Okay, so can I back myself up, or can I redeem myself?
Always. It's just that the science that we learned in school tries to teach us. Yeah, the science that they teach us.
Everything I'm trying to say, I have to defend myself.
Always. It's just that
the explanation behind everything I say.
Yeah, the science that they teach us about the whole color issues from the regions had to be fabricated, because you have dark-skinned people who are still living in some of the coldest places, who've always lived there since before the Ice Age. Their skin color never changed. They're still dark as hell. And you have those white Europeans. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so let's keep it as simple as possible. Let's move away from the book and literature for just a split second.
Okay.
Let's actually look at and envision a scenario. So, for example, and we're all from California, right? So, in Southern California, it's extremely hot, So, when all of the white people, when they go to the beach, what is the main thing they bring in their bag? Is it sunscreen lotion? I would say yes.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
I say this is because okay, so let me make my point.
Yeah, go ahead.
They'll know that if they don't use a skin protector, which is that specific type of cream or whatnot, this is a fact. They will get sunburned. This is a fact. This is not from some type of book. This is something that you can physically see. You go to the beach with a white person that doesn't use sunscreen. So, how often do you see a black guy or a person of being heavily melanated get a sunburn when they go to the beach?
That's a rare.
And you can answer that. That's an open answer.
Yep, that's a high rarity.
Can any of you answer that?
So that's a high rarity.
Well,
that is a high rarity.
If you asking me, I can answer it. Okay. Well, first, let me say this. Okay. In reference to what. Okay. Well, let me say this in reference to what you were saying. Okay. You got to realize there's and I know you know this, all different shades of melanin. You got white people. Let me say this.
I'm very simple. If I could direct question, I don't need you to expand on it. I just want a direct answer. I'm very logical. I'm simple. I just want simple explanation.
Look.
That's it.
I totally understand what you're saying. But I want you to know, sometimes direct questions requires answers. Or let me say it this way. Let me just say it this way. Well, look, when we're listening to you, and we listen to you explain it the way you explain it. We don't try to formate how you bring your answer. But let me answer you, okay? There are different complexions of melanated people. You got melanated people who look. You have melanated people who look. Let me say this, please. Who look white, and they're not white. And when these people go out into the sun, they brown. I have relatives in my family who they look almost white. My wife can almost pass as white, but my wife is not white. She's a biracial mixture individual. She's a biracial person. But you know what? But she's not white, though. That's my point. She's not white. And she'll tell you she's not white. A white person is a person who can't sit under the sun, can't enjoy the sun without sunscreen, or they will burn. But you got melanated people who look like they're almost white or look like they can pass as white, and they're not white. I've read slave wanted. I've read slave papers where slave masters were looking for their slaves, and they described their slaves as somebody who was so light skinned that they can blend in and pass as white, but they weren't. So that's my answer to that.
So back to my question, and I believe you did not answer my question. So let me repeat it again. My question to you again. When white people go to the beach, why is it that you sunscreen in order to avoid getting a sunburn or a sun rash from UV radiation rather than a darker skin complexion or let's say, a heavy melanated African descended person?
That's because the lack of the melanin in their skin. That's the lack of the melanin in their skin, and which science has depicted as a genetic anomaly, a mutation.
For white people.
To have a lack of melanin.
That's my point. So
yeah.
The second part, so the second part is that when you had mentioned, and I'm using your own words of what you just said. You said that you know of people that are heavily melanated, but they look as white as a white sheep. Throughout that term, albino. Now, to me, an albino is a person of Africa that's directly, genetically from African parents, but they have a skin disorder. They have no melanin, so they are of African descent, or directly from there, but they lack skin pigmentation. So my question to you, that since you said that you know a lot of people that's heavily melanated, but they look white as a ghost.
I never said white as a ghost. I never said white as a ghost. I said they can pass as white people. Thank you. No, but see, you're quoting me wrong, though. But you're quoting me wrong. I never said white as a ghost. I said they can pass as white.
You're still answering my question. No, you're completely dismissing my question. I don't need the explanation why they're white or why they're not white. My question to you for the third time. Using what you just said. You can ask your wife, and if she wants to say I'm white, I'll take that. But you said you know heavily melanated people, white as a ghost. And my rebuttal to you was, okay, I understand where you're coming from. But again, my question is, can those people survive in the sun without using sunscreen lotion and not get a sun rash or a skin rash from the UV radiation? Now, throughout their albinos. Yes or no?
To fix that real quick, he said he knew.
No, that's all I'm looking for right now.
I know you're looking for yes or no, but you misquoted. You misquoted my husband. You misquoted my husband, for one. Okay? You misquoted. He didn't say he knew heavily melanated people who were light. He said he knew black folks who were light. Not that they were heavily melanated. They're light skinned. For instance, I'm light skinned. I can pass for white, but I don't need sunscreen. I'm pretty much that light. I go outside, I tan. My grandfather could go outside and tan, and he's a white man. My aunt, his kids, his wife, no, they couldn't go out without sunscreen without burning. That's to answer your question. So there's a yes and there's a no. For the majority of white-skinned people who happen to be more of European descent, most of them cannot go into the sun without sunscreen. But those who of mixed races, who have ties to either somewhere in their bloodline of either heavily melanated folks, whether they're from Africa, America, Asia, doesn't matter where they're from, because not all black folks are African. Whether they have that or they have Native American in their bloodline. If they have that in there and they can go out in that sun and tan, then they can go out sun and tan. But it is recommended by white folks that white folks, no matter how light or how well they tan, to use sunscreen. they tell black folks the same thing.
Can I chime in?
Okay, but at first I wanted to correct you. So there is that yes and there is that no. And for one, my husband didn't say he knew heavily melanated people who looked white. They weren't albino. No, he said he knew and had family members who were so light that they looked white.
Can I chime in?
You may chime in.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I love that you gave me that explanation and you said that because I'm going to bring up another point that we first had. So I have two direct questions to you directly. My first question, you can go to the beach and just like you said, you don't have to use sunscreen, but you do get that tan. Now, why do you get a tan? That's my question. That's the first question.
Oh, that's an obvious one because I am of mixed race. My father is a Black Cherokee Indian and my mother is of Norwegian descent.
Perfect. Okay, so going to Norwegian, how do you pronounce it? Norwegian, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that part of the atmosphere, predominantly, there's white people. Yes or no?
If you want to classify most of them, that I've looked them up. There's some that are light skinned and some who are white skinned and some who are kind of. Okay, if you want to take from my family tree, I can't give you a yes or no because my great grandmother happened to have some of the darkest Norwegian skin for a Norwegian. They called her a black Norwegian even though she wasn't black. It's more complicated than that. I'm sorry. But they are some of the whitest skinned people there. But as far as my great grandparents, then they weren't some of the whitest people there. They were of olive complected skin.
Well, let me also chime in on this. I've been listening. Let me chime in on this. Let me say this. Let me say this, brother Jayden. Also,
can I finish?
Yes, but let me say this one thing before you finish. Let me say this was one thing. I just want to say this one thing. I want you to understand first. At least from our perspective, so you understand our mindset, okay? Because I know we might be sounding crazy to you. I'm not sure, but let me first establish this. Let me establish this though. Let me first establish this one historical thing that I know that maybe you might not know, or maybe you don't know and don't care. I don't know, but this is pertinent to me to our conversation to establish that melanated people are not designated to Africa. In other words, I don't believe melanation started in Africa. I don't believe that life necessarily started in Africa. Now, that's what science say. You got some people who believe that, some people don't. Some people believe in the theory of Pangea, some people don't. But see, I believe that you can go tell the Fijians of Fiji that they're African. Them people are not going to accept that. They're going to tell you, no, my ancestors been on the Fiji Islands for hundreds of thousands of years. We are Fijian. We are not African. You're not going to go to Australia and tell the Aborigines of Australia that they're African. They're not going to accept it. They're going to tell you, we've been here since the millennia. We established our own before these white people came and got dropped off on this island of Australia, which was ours before they got here. We're not African. So my point being is that melanation is not designated to one locality. You have melanated people all over this planet and have been all over this planet before white people came out of the caves of Europe. So I just had to say that.
Can I chime in?
Go ahead.
Can I chime in?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, before I say anything else, we need to have a level of respect as hosts. Now, the reason why I say this is because I want to bring up when you have something to say, I do not interrupt you at all, no matter how bad I want to chime in, and I give you that respect. So I just want to say, so when I'm giving my full explanation of your question, full response of my answer without being interrupted, and then you can chime in. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. So going back to my point of your Norwegian ancestors, I feel that they have a majority population of white. Now, you said that, I think you said your grandpa is heavily point is that you technically don't have to use sunscreen because you have those genetics from your grandpa that's heavily melanated, but you do tan because you have the genetics of predominantly white people in Norwegian. So just like you're biracial, so you get both genetics as a combination. So as you said, you have family that are white sunscreen because they're less melanated. Is that true?
True. That I do. I do have family members that do need sunscreen.
Thank you, Jesus Christ. Thank you. I love simple answers. So that's what I was trying to say. That's all I was trying to say is that, look, okay, you being biracial, you carry both spectrum of the genetics. You know, you do have to you can get a tan because you have ancestors that are predominantly white from Norwegian, but you know, you have that privilege not to use sunscreen because you have melanated ancestry as well. So that's going back to my point about why does whiter skinned people have to use sunscreen, or European descendant people have to use sunscreen versus innocent person. And your husband never gave me that simple answer. Nor you did as well.
Actually, I said that lighter skinned people do need whiter skinned people do need to use sunscreen. I did answer your question.
Thank you.
And that is a true fact. Those who
and
need
your
it.
husband never gave me a response.
Well, he did in his way. He was saying the same thing, but in his way. Yeah. So light skinned people, white skinned people, those who have a lack of melanin. Because I use the term lack of melanin. Those who have a lack of melanin in their skin do need to use sunscreen. Was how I answered your question.
Mm-hmm.
So that is true.
That's all I was trying to prove. That's all I was trying to prove. That's it. And you don't have to use rocket. You don't have to know rocket science. You can go to the beach and see this with your own two eyes.
That is true.
You know, so even though we may have a lot of differences, me and your husband, but it's like me, instead of always reading through different books, what makes me different out here is that I actually go to people that have physically experienced it in their life versus other versions of books that was passed down on different people's experiences. So to me, I can say that because
on that you guys also
family that's been through experiences. For example, let me give you a clean example. Okay, out here, I know people personally that have grandmas and grandmothers that actually has physical family that was brought on the slave boat to Mexico, and the name of the boat was called El Fado. So they can actually tell you their family experiences firsthand versus, I went to a library and picked up this book and, version 3 said this. Like, I understand it, okay, but me, I would like to go to the source, the direct source. And that's why, it's good to know things than to those experiences. Let me take another clear example. How us Americans are talking about, man, the civil rights and Rosa Parks, and we act like we've been through slavery. Our ancestors did. It's like we always take credit about what happened to our ancestors. They think our ancestors were alive right now. They're thinking of us like, well, you guys didn't go. You guys didn't go through anything. We went through that. So you guys are enjoying the fruits and benefits of it. So the reason why I'm kind of going on to write about that is because, no disrespect to your husband, but I get inboxed a lot and a lot of slack on a lot of the Israelite brothers, all kind of different religious, the so-called African groups, about this religion, this and that. Okay, I get it. Let's think about the modern day life. How does that impact us today? How can we move forward? Where do we stand right now? And as I was telling your husband a few days ago, I was with an Afrocentric person in Southern Mexico, and she told him, on top of translate, she said, okay, cool, we know our slavery, that's good to know, you're very informative, but at this moment, we're suffering financially. Give us advice on how we can make better skill sets to have a financial gain and build up an economy. That's where we're struggling at. Like, a lot of people always throw that, man, well, slavery, that. That's in the past. Okay, I'm highly informed, and I give credit to my ancestors. I feel sorry for what they've been through, but it's good to know of what they went through to not have it repeat in our situation. We can't do anything about the past. Forward, but never forget the past. Just acknowledge what happened. So that's what I get kind of pissed off about. It's like, man, there's so many pro-black people that's saying, everybody wants to be a voice now for the black community. But it's like, okay, at the end of the day, when you preach, when they go back home, they don't have any money in their pocket that they gained from the actual speech. I'm sorry, maybe I might be ignorant, but I look at the reality of it. This is what I know. People are struggling in southern Mexico. Not just the Afro-Blacks, but the indigenous population too, because without them, there wouldn't be a population of these Afro-Indian populations. So I'm sorry, I just can't feel sorry and bad for our African ancestors, but I feel bad for the Native Americans because they were here first and they go through the same as the Afro people. And the saddest thing about it is that Americans always try to distinguish and separate different people. But out here, they're united. They're united. They go through the same struggle regardless of the color of what they look like. Sorry if I went on a rant, but that's how I see it in first-person perspective.
May I comment now?
A bunch of books. I like to go to the direct source.
May I comment now?
Information from them. You can speak.
All right. So, my husband does do a lot of book research, but he also reaches out to people who know to get their perspective. Like for you, for example, because you're going through this. This is how he reaches out to find out more information about what is really seen. So, and he does it through the researching he finds. Then he sees if there's someone out there who's even doing more. And amongst you, besides you, he's reached out to Black Native American cultures. He's reached out to other cultures that have to live here in the U.S. who are being ignored to the point of saying that they don't exist. And so he reaching out to you telling us how it is out there. You have your cooperation, your togetherness of folks out there that have bound together. And you have some who've bound together out here despite their backgrounds, and they try to work together. Native and Black American tribes try to work together. The problem is that here, and as well as Mexico, there is that system of white supremacy that has to be overthrown. And in order to do that, you have to.
In America.
That's not just in America. It's in Mexico. It's in Central America. It's in Haiti. There's a system of white supremacy that keeps Black cultures from achieving what is needed. Its existence, it's there. And you only can really find out by researching, finding other articles, finding other people who've talked about it, interviews, and other people who share the history. So the history, yes, is important. It has to teach the people this is what happened. This is what is happening. It's in order for us to push forward. In order to push forward, you have to have all the surrounding information, not just from books, but from the cultures at hand. And it's wonderful that a lot of the people who are in Mexico, do have the oral tradition of knowing that they are both Native Mexicans and they have that African descent. Whereas here in America, that oppression made it harder to happen. It is necessary for people to know who they are, to have that drive to push forward, to change the system that they're in. So he does reach out to people who have those experiences like yourself and chiefs of tribes here in America to get the whole picture, to show the whole world that Black and brown are no different from each other. They suffer the same oppression of white supremacy in this world that tries to keep its foot on the world. So it's not going to just take changing in one place. It's going to take global change for Black and brown folks, Black folks, all melanated people to realize their history is older, they're stronger, and they're of more multitude than what is being said. And being of biracial descent and raised in the communities I have been raised in, the multiple communities I've been raised in, I have been able to see the variations, the differences, the ignorances, the biases, and even looking down upon one's own people just because they didn't make the status that they made, because they're living in this white supremacist culture that says if you don't meet our rules here, as white folks say, then you don't matter. At the same time, they want to keep their slave class in order to have them still on top, to keep people down and brainwashed, saying, oh, it doesn't matter anymore about what happened here. What happens now is what goes forward. If you don't know and don't accept what happened in the past, and if you don't pay attention to it, it will repeat itself. You won't see the signs of it repeating itself. So culture, history, and all of it matters, whether it's from the ancients who wrote, those before us who wrote it, who experienced it and told us and shared it, the oral traditions, the historical print traditions, as well as those people who are living in different cultures who've got some connection, some ability to that grouping of together, of clinging together. That needs to go global, not just in Mexico, not just in one place, but everywhere. If black folks, melanated folks from around the world could see that and hear that, and that's what my husband is trying to do. That's why he calls his show The Black Village, because it's melanated people, no matter what skin tone, no matter from where you're from, is going to take to overthrow the current system in order for everyone to live comfortably and peacefully.
Okay, is
Sorry, finish. I'm just listening. I'm just waiting, that's all. Let me know when you're done.
Alrighty, any go ahead and give a comment.
Oh no, I was just listening to you. To me, you're so elegantly putting things together so well, Queen. What can I say? I mean, I love it when a woman's, when she's dropping the raw and uncut. You know, I don't want you, like I said, brother, I reached out to you, brother, because it was wonderful, and I enjoy hearing you tell me from your perspective what's going on. Also, you don't even just tell it from your perspective, from your experiences and what you have seen and what you have heard. You also tell it from your perspective, because you say you like things simple, direct. You don't like the elongated version. You don't like the complicated version. You don't like the difficult version or something somebody have to break down into sections. You want it raw and uncut, simple as that. And me being an older person, me being 50 years old, I have a longer way of explaining things and a deeper way of explaining things. And sometimes I forget, and sometimes I don't know how to put it more simple. But what I will say in conclusion to my wife is that I care about all people, but yes, specifically melanated people. And to me, anybody who's non-white, not just to me, but this is also science, anyone who's non-white is melanated. And and so on that level, that's what I'm all about, education and spreading the truth. And so, like you say, people do a lot of talking, but you know what? Communication is important, because that's how you learn, by listening and sharing. Not just listening, but sharing as well. So go ahead and go ahead and
Can I comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I actually have questions for both of you guys, direct questions, but I want to start with your wife first, if that's okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so my direct question to you is that, and I'm completely unaware of the culture in Norwegian. So my question to you is that, how much of the culture of Norwegian, or that comes from Norwegian, what do you know of that you can directly relate to from Norwegian?
To be honest with you,
I'm just curious.
To be honest with you, just as much as I could relate to my black culture here is none. When my great-grandparents moved here from Norway, they left Norway. They came here and became Americanized. That's what they taught their children. So when my grandmother and my grandfather met, they were just, two American kids. So they didn't pass down where they were from. I had to find out from my grandmother. I had to ask her, because it wasn't shared. And like I said, when I grew up, to be honest with you, I didn't have just my family. I was stuck in the system, so I was really everywhere. So that's why, I'm like, I lived here and there and everywhere, and my mother never really cared for me. So finding my heritage and who I was doing a family tree. So that's how I know my great-grandparents on my mother's side are from Norway. So that's how I know my great-grandparents are from Norway, is because I had to ask. Just like I had to ask where my father's parents were, and all I got was the fact that his mom was a Cherokee. That's it.
Okay, so let me ask again. As far as the Norwegian culture directly, do you know of anything that was passed down to you directly that you can direct and relate to? And let me give you an example so I can get a little bit more clear.
Okay.
As far as the Norwegian language or the food that they eat, their style of dances, or just anything, any common interest that they share in Norwegian. That's what I'm really trying to get at.
Yeah, like I said, I had none. I actually got. I have
any experiences or any part of the culturist traits from Norwegian.
Again, I said no, I don't have any, because it wasn't shared. My great grandparents moved here and they left Norway behind. So no, I have no cultural reference for that. So may I ask why?
Okay, so that's part one of my question. So you're more American than anything, and you don't really share any kind of cultural traits with that side of the family. Can we fair to speak and say that's correct?
Yeah, just an American culture. That's all I have.
Okay, so the second part to that is that do you it's kind of hard now, but okay. Well, my follow-up question to that was, I was going to ask you, do you embrace your Norwegian side as much as you embrace called black side?
To be honest with you, I just embrace myself as a.
The reason why I asked that,
to be honest with you, I don't embrace my mother's or my father's side more than the other, because I am who I am. Neither one of them gave me any cultural history. I was just raised in America through here, there, and everywhere, like I said. So I accept me for me. I am an American citizen. I was born here. I'm native to America. My family roots tie here from my grandfather's side and my father's side. So I just connect myself to just being a native to America.
Okay, now the reason why I brought that up is because but just in general, and this is just me being or growing up in America, it always seems that the black biracial people, they always tend to lean towards the black side and kind of abandon any other part of their genetic makeup there to speak. So, for example, a mixed breed, which is like she could be, black, white, and let's say Puerto Rican or Spanish in her, but she'll lean more towards the blackness and kind of just like kick everything else to the side. And that, to me, that's very sad. And the reason why I say that is because it's like, what about the other people? That's just like, well, yes, I do embrace my blackness, but I'm not just going to be like, since my fourth generation grandma, a European Canadian, I'm not just going to completely dismiss her just because, I'm predominantly black and things like that. So it's just, to me, not saying you, but just in general, it just kind of hurts that, for all the biracial people, they kind of lean only and solely towards their blackness and not really anything else.
May I comment?
My advice to you, if I may finish, my advice to you, this is just, it's optional. It's not optional, sorry. There's always room and time. You can always go back and, trace and look at the culture just today and learn about those as well, as much as you embrace and learn about the black people. Okay. That's my only advice. As much as you embrace the black side, it's nice for you to embrace the other parts of the colors of your family too, because it's like your husband said, he loves all people, no matter what color they are. So we should all treat each other as equals and not just kind of balance out one more than the other. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, but as a may I make a side comment, a little.
I'm sorry, I brought that up.
I was just kind of wondering why, for one, and a slight corrections. I was part of a forum chat once when I first got introduced into the computer world. That their statement of how black folks, mixed black folks, either stick with being mostly black, that's not really true. You have a lot of mixed people out there who want to make that their own race. You have some who want to stick with white people, some who want to stick with black people, and you have some who want to just make it their own race. That's why I'm wondering, why is it you asked about my cultural background and what I identify with? And why was that in apartment stated?
Well, your husband doesn't identify you only being Norwegian. I mean, because that's kind of the part that you leave out.
Well, the thing is because it's not important. It's not really important. What? No, it's not important. It's not important because to me, and to my husband, I am me. My husband does identify me as a black woman because that is a genetic factor, a major fact, because melanated people do dominate over the white gene, and that's what you become once you have any melanin in your skin, is you are black. That's science. That is what's on their books. Because I'm not I may have Norwegian blood, but it's not my history. It's not my culture. It's not what I identify with. I identify with as being an American person. I can't. That's what that is. And for my husband, I can tell you right now that he identifies as being a black Native American because that is his culture, that is his genealogy, and that is where his family came from. But as this all relates to the simple fact that you have stated while being out in Mexico, the folks out there identify themselves as just being Mexican, as I identify myself as just being an American. So, briefly, because we have gone way over our time, I usually make sure my husband, because I usually make sure my husband stays on time. I usually make sure my husband stays on time, and
all right. Well, I didn't know we were on a time frame. Your husband never advised we were going to be on a time frame. And normally when people are speaking in depth,
because normally our show is for an hour. Our show is normally for an hour from 3 to 4. There has been times we have gone over, and it's not often. But I was just letting you know so we can just...
And not only that, even after the show, even when I close the show off the air, we can still continue our discussion. It doesn't end the discussion because the show is off the air. We went like like way over 30 minutes over our show time. And our show is normally from 3 to 4 Pacific Standard Time. But yeah, a lot of times we'll go.
Can I still make my response of what she just said? If you don't mind, I mean, I still have my hand raised. Like, I mean,
well, you know,
I said you could, to respond to what I was saying, to answer my question. Yeah.
If it's going to go into a long statement, I would like to end the show right now, and then we can.
I'm not lazy. You already know. I told you I'm a simple, basic, logical guy. I just use facts, and I use words what people just said. That's it. You should know that from our almost 2-hour conversation over time.
Well, yeah, for the most part, I've been listening to you and my wife. You're listening to you and my wife talk, and yes, you're a very simple, straight, direct person. But when you explain something, you're very elongated. You go from one point to the next point while you're explaining, and everybody patiently listen. So, on that note,
If I make this short.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Okay, so pretty much she just disregarded her other part of the family. So that's just like, why do we even talk about African history? Should we just disregard, the past? That's like saying the same thing. If you can't say that makes sense, then we can't have a conversation because that is a fact. She said that she can disregard her whole family because on that side of the spectrum of Norwegian, then that's just like us being black American, we can just disregard the other end. Well, who cares if, like, slavery, man, that's in the past, man. Like, that's in the past. So I want to know what's going on right now in the modern day world. that's what he just compared it to. To me, that it hurts and it sucks because you're disregarding parts of your family and your ancestors on that side, because without them, you wouldn't be here.
Okay, let me
Not a fact, then
let me clarify what I meant by it didn't matter. Because of what I was referring to is that culturally for me, it didn't matter. Of course it matters genetic wise, and of course it matters where I'm from. But as far as who I am today, since it had nothing to do with who I was growing up, it wasn't told to me until I was an adult. All right. Sure, knowing where my family came from was important to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked. But as a cultural reference for me, that cultural reference didn't matter much to me, and it really doesn't because I have no basis for it. I can go and I can read Norwegian history. I can't find out why my grandparents left Norway because my great-grandparents are gone. And nobody asked them. So none of their children know. And the only one who's still surviving, she doesn't even know because she can't even remember where her parents are from. So I can't base my identity on something that I have no basis for. But I can on an American culture that has a very, very sad place in history, because I have this part of my family from another side of my family who took part in the sadness of this history on both sides. So no, culturally, historically, I consider myself an American citizen, American native to be exact, whose life began here, whose history began here. But I'm not talking genetics, I'm talking culturally. My Norwegian culture came with my great-grandparents. Nor did my grandfather on my mom's side bring his history with him either. Because as far as I know, most white folks in my family didn't discuss their white history, their Native American history, their European history. So my culture began when I decided to become aware of who I was and where each part of me came from and what part of history that part played. The culture that's here, native to America.
And let me add to you what you're saying, Queen, as well. I saw a video of a sister who was Irish and Native American from North America. She knew her tribal roots to the Native American tribe, so she lived on the reservation. Now she knew her father was black and Native American. Her mother was Irish. So my point being is that she was raised on the reservation. She embraced Native American way of life. Her culture was Native American. Now somebody might can argue and say, well, why don't she go find out about her Irish roots? She know of her Irish roots. She tells her children about it. But that's not her culture. Her culture is where she was raised on the reservation with her tribe. All right. Now, so
thank you. You're my overall part of the conversation and discussion. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. So
Thank you.
As long as we end this on
a good note.
So I want, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, go.
At the end of the day, I'm sorry. Let me just say, at the end of the day, I love you, brother. I have no grudges. We can love having discussions, and I will never hold grudges against anyone from our differences. No matter how much of and things like that. At the end of the day, all point of views, and I'll still respect you. At the end of the day. That's it.
It's been a beautiful conversation. I have to admit, it's been a beautiful conversation. And I don't normally get this involved in conversations.
That's good, though. But I just have to say, just me being here in Mexico, and what I've learned the most, me myself, and I'll be a perfect example, us Americans are very ignorant. When we don't leave the United States and see other cultures, we are very ignorant. Now, that's just how we were raised, We're raised only to look at things that we grow up in the American society. But like out here in Mexico, like yeah, you like your wife may say, you know, there is like, you know, white supremacy type, you know, it's more of a caste system, you know. Yes, white privilege, you know, have more money, and the darker you are, you know, the more, you know, poor you are. Whatnot. Okay, yeah, they understand that, but together, regardless of their color, and if they can work together, you know, with the same amount of workload going on, they're happy. They're okay with that. They don't look at the division in between the genetics out here like the United States do. We focus on, I'm not saying us, but the U.S. focus too much on division.
That's true.
You can't keep comparing every single country that has the same division scale. You can't do that. Don't do that. I'm saying that directly. Don't do that, because everyone that didn't grow up American.
That's true.
That's true.
That's true.
That's true.
That's true.
That's it.
And that's why culture matters.
That's it. Like I said, you're not the only brother that told me about. Like I said, I'm glad you called me and reached out to me, you know, and you dropped a lot of info on me. I'm highly appreciative of it. But at the same time, like, people need to understand, I'm here in person. I get firsthand experience.
That's true.
You know,
true.
so, but man, just like you said, our brown brothers, our black brothers, they're already united. So if you bring that speech down here, they're gonna look at you like, what the hell is this dude talking about? Like, we're like, why is it, we're united already? So it's like, you're talking about something that we already know about.
Yeah.
Because giving you that up front, because they're already united. No matter if there's albinos out here, and then you know the, you know, the natives and like the more African people like that can think of the divide and conquer. We need to step out of that mentality to look at different cultures, you know, apart from, you know, Portugal and, you know, Brazil, with all of the heavily influenced structure of brutality of slavery, but every country is not like that.
That's true. You're right, my brother.
I've experienced it firsthand.
You're right. And we have to...
You know what's funny? I want to make it real quick. Just before you call me or I called in, I'm here in Mexico City right now. And I was here with a brother from Canada, like a brother from Canada. And his first language natively is French. So I'm thinking, wow, are you from like West Africa? Because they speak French in West Africa. He's like, no, I'm from Canada, and my native language is French. My second language is English. And he said, wow, you guys actually went through slavery in the U.S. because in Canada, we didn't have that shit in Canada. I'm like, no, I never knew that. Right before I called you, I didn't know that they didn't have slavery in Canada.
No, that's why a lot of Native Americans and a lot of slaves ran to Canada because of the freedom in Canada, because they knew back then they didn't, you know, there was no slavery. The French did not practice slavery in Canada. So, but man, we're going, you know, let me end this right quick, and now I want to, if you want to stay on hold, as soon as I end the show, we can continue our discussion after I gotta let me get off the air right quick. So you just hold on. I'm gonna have to edit this. This is the Black Village Community. This is the Black Village Community Podcast. This is Jaycee, a.k.a. AfroBlack. I'm still here with you. We've had an enjoyable discussion that just went off the Richter scale, but we came to a delicious black ending. That's what's important. We came to a delicious black ending where we all came to a common understanding. So I'm going to have to edit this and put it on the air. So anybody who download this, believe me, just bear with me. I will have to edit this, and so I can put it on so everybody can download it and check it out. But I got my brother Jayden here with me. I enjoyed his discussion. I hope he enjoyed mine. We had fun together. And I hope this is not just the only time, but we're going to have another time and maybe be a little bit more organized. So it'll be a whole lot better. But either way it goes.
I'd also like to thank you and your wife for having me on the show and being interactive to my questions and my discussion too. So I like to thank both of you guys for joining the discussion too.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I liked hearing your perspective and seeing things from another point of view. You brought a lot with you, young man. You brought a lot.
Yeah, you brought a lot to the table, and I want to do this again. So let's do this again. And but I gotta end it right now. So if you want to hold on and we can so we can have a proper way of getting offline with first, so just hold on. But I'm finna end the podcast right now. So I will be back next Delicious Black Sunday. Me and my queen dropping nothing but the raw and uncut, talking about truth with the conscious community, sharing truth, networking, talking about the raw and uncut. You can always join us here anytime, every Sunday from 3 to 4 Pacific Standard Time, West Coast, here at the Black Village, sponsored by Spreaker. So we will be back. Queen, last words?
If folks here united the way they did in Mexico after what they went through, then we would have peace. So peace.
Last words you want to say to the community, bro? Any last words, Brother Jay, you want to say before we head out?
It might need to be offline. I'll just ask you because I'm broad like that. So this is a question to your wife. In the Black community, I hear the term queen thrown loosely a lot around the Black community. So what is your definition of queen in the Black community?
Yeah, I'll have to answer you as soon as we close this off the air. So just give me a moment.
So hold that question right there.
I will answer you though.
Hold on, just hold on. She's gonna answer that in just a minute. So we'll be back. We will be back next Delicious Black Sunday. As always, love, peace, and chicken grease because I love chicken. That's how I end it, just like that.
Wasn't my thing, and I choose to live in unity. At peace with everyone within and out of my community. Homicide, suicide, overdoses, who's to God? 95. People prostituting slang as an everyday thing. And growing up nowadays, survival is a game. Some win, some lose. And it's a damn shame, cause a bullet has no name, he couldn't aim. Who's to blame for a child gone wild, no concern to learn? Choosing street knowledge, don't care about high school, won't make it to college. I'm telling you now, you got to make the best of you. If half your soul's already gone, you got to save the rest of you.
What's your name?
It's JV. You can't say I never tried, stepping up for what I believe in. Black and brown pride.
What's up, my brown sister?
What's up, my black brother?
I mean, we're in the same boat, but we're two different colors, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm looking both ways as I walk out my house. Brown brother, you got to understand. Black brother, brown brother, same blood, same hands. We must come together as one, cause if we kill each other off, then it's a fucked up outcome. We got to pull it together, stay friends forever, and in time, it'll all get better. See, as a team, we would rise and be powerful with that black and brown pride.